Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the podcast. I am your host, Fallon Jordan, and I am so excited because while I am passionate about all things decluttering, it's because it's about your relationships and your health. That's the way that I like to do it. And what is the biggest, scariest thing that someone could possibly tell you? But you have an inoperable, aggressive, chemo resistant stage for cancer. And if you were like my amazing guest, Julie Stevens, she said, okay, I'm going to take this information and go on my way. And in 9 months, I am going to be cancer free. And now knowing you after, years after this transformation, you have this incredible company where you're supporting other people in their journey when they get similar news. So I would love to share a little bit more about kind of what happened. Because when I think of you, and this is through our mutual friend telling me the story, but I literally just think of you telling your friends and then what immediately happened after that. And like that like contributes to my why of like letting people know what is possible. So thank you so much for being here, Julie. And if you want to just dive in, we're so excited to hear all of your wisdom and insights. Go ahead. The
Yeah.
floor is your, oh, my internet was unstable.
Um,
Sorry.
Hold on. I'm breaking up just a little bit. So let me make sure this will work. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Sorry.
Don't be
Can you
sorry.
hear
It's just
me
making it
okay?
more
You're breaking
exciting.
up just a little bit for me. Can you hear me okay? Okay,
Mhm.
perfect. Awesome. Okay. My professional life is I'm an industrial psychologist. So I work with companies on how to build talent strategies, how to identify the right talent, and how to use data to predict outcomes. So that's where my head was for the last 20 plus years is that's what I do every day.
Yeah.
And the good news is, as part of my work experience, when Obamacare was launched in 2009, I actually did some work with the American Hospital Association. And that work was to go into hospital systems and look at every single job in a hospital to understand what the requirements were in light of the new technology and the new legislation. So
Wow.
I had two advantages that most people don't, that I understood how healthcare organizations made decisions from the board down and what every job was meant to do in a healthcare system. So I understood, and you can imagine when I went in, I had to have an emergency surgery for my right hemicolectomy, and I gave performance feedback to every single one of my nurses. Hey, you did this really well. I want to just point out that you did, like I literally gave the charge nurse here's my week stay, and here's my favorite nurses, and here's what they did differently, and like yeah, you can imagine like I study jobs for a living.
Yeah.
So this was my window into the world of cancer of I don't know science, but I know data and I know jobs. So let me see what your job is and if it's what I think it is.
Mhm.
So, you get something like a stage 4 cancer diagnosis and you kind of are knocked back on your heels. And the first thing I did was I took stock of what do I have to work with in this journey. And I knew how to use data and I knew how to build a team and I knew how to build a strategy. So that was one thing. The second thing is I knew healthcare, so I knew the business of healthcare, but not the actual science of healthcare. But the third is I throw a really good theme party. So I knew I had those three strengths to walk into my journey, and I had to go to work to figure out how to leverage those strengths to change the world, or change my story, my world, not the whole world. Then, so the first thing I did was I studied what do they do outside of the U.S. because I wanted to bifurcate for-profit and not-for-profit healthcare systems, and my hypothesis was countries that have not-for-profit healthcare systems where the government pays for cancer care is going to care about the package they put together so that people don't have recurrence. So first and foremost, let's see what they're doing that's different. So that was kind of the first foray into this of like I wanted to know the jobs and I wanted to know how they heal differently globally.
That is so
Do you want me to keep
cool.
going or
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah. Okay. Let's talk globally really quickly. So the first thing I started to look at is how do they heal in like China versus India, where I knew in India they thought a lot about reflexology, they thought a lot about meditation. So I was trying to think of where these traditional healing epicenters were: Chinese medicine, India, Turkey, which is kind of a little bit mix of every culture, the UK. So I studied cancer care in those specific markets and understood and identified there are 6 healing toolboxes that can be leveraged, but the average cancer journey in America only used one. So my first thing was I'm going to use all 6. And I don't know which of these 6 are going to work, but I don't care because I'm willing to spray and pray it's my life, you know?
Right.
So then the second part was the jobs, which I think was pretty interesting because I ended up having to even study medical school curriculum and what my doctors learned. And like I even went as deep as to understand in Georgia, where I live in Atlanta, a doctor only has to do 20 hours of continuing education credits a year. And I understood I could only hold my doctors accountable for what they knew and what they learned in medical school and the data they had access to. So I started to rip into medical school and I learned they only studied one of the 6 healing toolboxes. So the first thing was, cool, I need a bigger team. And so I ended up building a team of 11 doctors and healers. And then the second part was I understood how are they compensated? And that was a big aha for me because I realized that oncologists are compensated every single time you go to chemotherapy. So when I understood their comp model, like literally they want to prescribe this because it helps them make money and it helps the hospital make money. I had to then question what are the data we're using to predict that that's the right thing to do. So that's kind of what started this of, okay, I'm gonna voraciously study across the globe and I'm gonna voraciously study these jobs. And I realized the job isn't what I thought. I thought their job was to help me live a long and healthy life. Their job is to reduce cancer burden. And that's a very different thing.
Wow. Incredible. So I want to back up to when you first got the diagnosis and you started telling people in your life what type of cancer it was and whatever other information you shared and what that experience was like for you.
Perfect. Okay. So let me just kind of reset the scene for I was a pretty vivacious. I traveled all the time. I went to music. I had tons of friends. I had a great life. I really was not the person you'd think was sick. And so the only sign or symptom was kind of low iron. And then I went for a colonoscopy. And honestly, cancer wasn't on my radar. I thought I had an ulcer. I worked really hard. I thought it was definitely stress related. So when I was woken up by my colonoscopy and the gastroenterologist said, you have a tumor so large we couldn't get the infant-sized camera to the other side. It hit me and I had no idea. And everyone's first response was, well, they caught it early. We got it early. We caught it early. And so I think I understood then that people needed a little hope. And there wasn't a lot of hope. So I had to figure out how to communicate this accurately. But also one of the things I realized right away is and again, I'm of all the things in life, I'm blessed with so many friends that I would have 50 or 60 people calling or texting in a given day, which told me I was repeating the same story over and over. And everyone was kind of freaking out, but hoping it was early. I knew it wasn't early. So, one of the things I did do with my community was I built a place where I could communicate once a day my updates. And so I wouldn't have to be cancer girl all day, every day. And I could actually deploy my energy to live in positive psychology. So I built a team of doctors, and then I built a team of care practitioners, and I built a key team of my caregivers. And it was about 200 people big. And every day I'm, music focused. So I would give a song of the day, and then I do a blog post with all of my updates and my medical records so people could really follow along my journey. And I think it really helped people kind of understand, this can happen to anyone. No signs or symptoms. I was 43. I was under the recommended age of 45. Like this is real. It's getting younger. Two, and you would have never known this before my activity or my behavior that I had was sick. But also, like, I think people understood right away I wasn't going to do it the average way. And they really came to support me.
That's amazing. And like I'm just thinking of the whatever platform you use, whether it was like a group chat or whatever, but just allowing yourself like that's what people want. They want to support you and having that being able to plan and strategize that you can't be on your phone literally all day responding the same messages to the same people, I think is huge. And I mean, how cool is that like other people on your team were there too? And I think that that's something definitely the people listening are resonating with or having an aha moment about is it's about people supporting people and especially supporting someone that we love and care about. It doesn't matter what my title is in Julie's life. It's I'm here to support and this is where we all can go. And I think that that's so important because, if God forbid, like you do get sick and it is because of stress, like notifications are like the biggest stress. Yeah. Like it boggles my mind when I see how many notifications people have on their phones sometimes. And I'm like, you wonder why you're stressed and like sick and unable to sleep and like all be distracted. Like I can't have any of that in my life. Like I need things organized and like shut down, right?
Yeah. And that was, it also compensated. So besides the positive psychology and the cancer girl, it also compensated for one of my weaknesses. And I knew the reality is that when I was diagnosed, I had a relationship and he lived in Chicago, but I was doing this pretty much on my own. I lived alone. Things like that. My parents were in Florida, so I didn't have anyone living with me to help. I had tons of local help,
Wow.
but no one living with me. So one of my I'm an industrial psychologist, so I know my personality and I know one of the things I'm really weak at is asking for help. And in fact, I don't really ask for help. And so for me, it was also really beneficial to have this because I could post my needs and I didn't have to ask. I could just say, I need a ride. And 10 or 15 people would reply, I can do that. So it became extremely easy for me to get what I needed without me feeling like I was a burden to anyone because if you couldn't do it, you just didn't respond. So it became much easier for me to manage my group and what I needed by having this opportunity, this central repository of support, but also the song. And this sounds crazy, but I would be very intentional with my song of the day. And
Mhm.
sometimes I'd listen to that song all day. But then I would go put that playlist on and I would be reminded to be strong and all of these things. And my caregivers actually added to this playlist. So it truly was an energetic connection to love and strength and power. And that's so valuable.
100%. And if you haven't shared that playlist, I'm sure people are like, I would love to have that
I
on
would
my
love to share it.
Spotify.
Yes, I absolutely will share it with you because it is just a lot of power songs that help like I'm still standing and I'm going to tell you what, I can't tell you how many hundred times I have danced to that since I was diagnosed because I am still standing and I will keep still standing, you know?
I love that song.
Yeah.
It's such a good song.
Yeah.
So where were you at in your healing journey where you decided to create Mojo Health?
This is actually really interesting. So, you would think that the hardest time for me was when I was diagnosed, and it was not because I was activated to get busy. And so I was like a research hound. I was talking to people, I was networking with other survivors. I was doing my work. I was building a plan. And so I never really was that stressed. There were a couple of moments where it was hard for me, like when I found out I was chemo resistant, and like those moments where you're like, "Oh my God, like that takes a breath." But the hardest time mentally for me is going to not make sense to anyone who hasn't been diagnosed with cancer, but once you have, it'll make sense. It's actually when I was about to be declared no evidence of disease. So
Wow.
when I found out I was not cancer girl anymore, I didn't know who I was, and that broke me because I can never be who I was before. That gave me cancer. Like
Hmm.
the decisions I made around what I ate and how I invested my energy and the people I surrounded myself with and how I handled stress and all of that did not serve me. So I couldn't be that girl. And cancer girl, like she just was worried about health and nothing else. So I don't want to be that girl anymore. So who am I? And I knew, honestly, it was interesting. I was at a music festival in Mexico during treatment, which again, I want to just point out who goes to a music festival in Mexico during treatment because you're typically feeling pretty crappy, but I was literally raging and having the best time of my life. And one night I was sitting on the beach and I realized I had identified through my experience a different formula for healing. And again, remember I'm kind of a data dork, so I was able to say, "Oh, if I pull these tests here, I can predict this. And if I pull these tests here, I can predict this. And if I do this here, I can predict this." And so I knew in January of 2023, I knew a different formula. And when I was driving home from the PET scan that told me I was cancer free, is when I realized I had to create Mojo.
Amazing. So tell us about Mojo.
So Mojo is basically, it's really hard. And I would wake up when I was in my cancer journey crying because I knew if I was a single mom, I would die. Because I would have listened to the first doctor because I would have been living in fear. And I
Hmm.
kept thinking of I can't let my journey be the one that I win and not let the single mom who has children not win. So I need to do everything I can to help them really succeed in their journey. And I learned we are not set up to success. And so a couple of the things, The standard of care that a hospital delivers based on cancer means you go and get data, two pieces of data, biopsy and imaging, which tells you the size of the cancer and the location. It does not tell you the type of cancer cell, which for the people listening, hey, guess what? There are lots of different types of cancer cells, and each one gets healed differently. So just because you have breast cancer kind of doesn't matter. It matters if you have a KRAS positive or if you're this positive or that positive. That's what really tells you what will work to heal it. So the first thing I realized is they don't measure the type of cancer cell before they tell you what type of treatment to take, which that doesn't follow the scientific process.
Yeah.
So then the second thing is then they will give you 6 months of chemo and then test for efficacy. BS. No, that doesn't work for me because I was able to find a $30 blood test that predicted I was chemo resistant outside of my oncologist and run that blood test on my own. And I found out I was chemo resistant and told him to pull data. So I wanted people to know the data that insurance will pay for, that you can ask for, that you can request and demand, that will differentiate your journey. So that's what started Mojo. Is I want to teach people the data that they can use. And this is objective blood markers or genetics or genomics, all the data that literally has been well researched and is out there. It's just not the standard of care. The second thing is I want people to really understand you cannot abdicate control to an oncologist. They can be your Sherpa and your guide around conventional medicine, but there is so much that is not taught in conventional medicine that you really need a team. So I started Mojo so people would know and understand, first off, what should I do right after I'm diagnosed? And the first thing is gather your data. And the second thing is, how do I build a strategy? So we're doing all sorts of things to help people understand your strategy should not be to treat cancer cells. Your strategy should be to measure data, treat cancer cells, heal the root causes, and mitigate side effects. And that's a strategy. So we've built all sorts of resources for people to just come to our website and learn right away what they can do. Like one, if I can give an example, is did you know side effects are optional? Like nobody told me that, but like they don't tell you that. They just tell you it's going to suck or we're going to give you this pharmaceutical for nausea or whatever. No, I outmaneuvered all of them because I got really weird and I looked at every single side effect and I built a strategy. So I was going to have cracked hands and heels. Well, I put lotion on and I wore gloves to bed every night. Or you get really cold sensitivity where you can't drink a drink for a couple of days after your treatment. So I would suck on ice chips the whole time I was in there so I wouldn't have cold sensitivity. So I was able to figure out a behavioral workaround for every single side effect. So we've developed a tool for anyone to come to our website and learn, what can I do? From a supplement or diet or lifestyle or healer perspective, you can do a lot. You have agency, you have power. They just don't tell you. So Mojo Health exists to teach you what they don't tell you.
Amazing. And yes, all of your freebies are life-changing. And I'm sure everybody listening is already grasping that concept of what you provide as resources being life-changing and literally life-saving. And I, as a visual person, not data person, give me an Excel sheet and I'm like, womp womp. I love the picture because we've seen all of those memes of like the iceberg and it's just the tip out of the water of, two things. Everything else below, for you, like on the website, talking about what it means for cancer, like that was really, really powerful. So I wanted to kind of give you a shout out and let my visual peeps know that like seeing that, and I'm going to save it on my computer and like share it and post it. That was life-changing because especially the concept of the different types of cancer cells, because a lot of people don't understand that, right? They're focused on the biopsy and they're focused on the location. They're not focused on what's going on. And I'm curious because my algorithm's always listening to me and I love my algorithm. There's so much about like certain types of like hurt frequency music that helps kill cancer cells, spending 7 days in the forest, like those kinds of things. Have you done any data around like what types of cancer cells like certain things that you don't actually have to put in your mouth, just like strategies?
So that's what I'm building. That's the future of us. So can I take a quick minute to explain the iceberg? Because I think it's really important how we develop that.
Yes.
Okay. So I didn't know any of this. I just knew the data they used to treat me was insufficient. And so I gathered all these healers and doctors. And one, of course, was a gentleman by the name of Oscar Sierra, who is an herbalist and an acupuncturist. And really, he's like a Chinese medicine doctor of oncology, is that really what he does. But all of these different certifications. And he was able and actually to teach me these data points and how they could be leveraged. So I knew many of these data points existed and I used them at some point in my journey. But it wasn't until the two of us went to an oncology conference. It was the Precision Oncology Conference last fall in October. And we're there with the National Cancer Institute and MD Anderson and all of the best cancer researchers really in the globe. And they were only talking about a subset. So we started tracking on my notebook and I was like, we did this data and we did this data. And, we did cancer biomarkers, we did genetics, we did molecular DNA of the cancer, we did immune dysregulation, we did nutrition, we did personality, all of these data types. So we started to check of which are the ones that they're talking about. And what we found out is the only data that conventional medicine pulls is to predict the pharmaceutical, the radiation, or the surgery you need. It is nothing else. So it's not to talk about root causes or not to talk about what else you can do. So our wake up call when we kept saying, why aren't you looking at immune dysregulation? Because immune feeds cancer was that's not their bag. Their job is to treat cells. And so that is what the data they look at is only to treat cells. So I just want to, when you look at this iceberg, just understand the very top of it looks at biopsy and imaging. That's what the typical cancer journey has. And that's what, like, if you go anywhere in the US, they'll use biopsy and imaging. If you go to the top 10 cancer centers, they will use the top 6 data points, which includes your cancer biomarkers, like the blood markers in your body, or your genetics, which would tell you why, if there's a genetic reason why you have cancer, which let me just say that only 8% of cancers have a genetic reason, 92% are because of our choices. But we can also be looking at immune dysregulation and nutrition, which really tells the story of how we're going to weather the storm and what we need to do to shore up the root causes. So I encourage people to look at this data, to understand it. And then we also have something called our Mojo Functional Blood Panel on our website, which describes the exact tests you should be asking for from your doctor.
Amazing. I love that. Everyone here knows I love a lab order.
Yeah.
Amazing. Well, I am so grateful for all the work that you're doing. And I love Mojo Health. And definitely, if you're listening, please share it with as many people as you can. Share this conversation with as many people as you can, because there are those types of cancer where you are told that there's nothing that can be done. And as we know, that is completely untrue. And thankfully, we have someone who's, I mean, God led you on this path of like your professional development and like all the different things that you have done professionally. Like you were literally created to create this template for people. And I know my spiritual peeps are just like in awe of how all of that beautifully orchestrated came together. And it's very beautifully outlined in Julie's bio, if you guys want to read her bio. But I'm just so grateful for everything you're doing beyond measure. And just thank you so much for making time for us.
For sure. And if I can just take one more second, we have this Mojo formula for healing that we've developed, and it really is designed to teach people and empower people what you can do differently. That healing isn't just for cancer. It is for anything that you need to do. Is the idea is the way we heal in the US is to treat symptoms. It is an allopathic healthcare model, and it started in 1909. It is up to us to shift that back to really serve what we need going forward. So I want everyone listening to really think about what you can do to heal your root causes. And one of the things we have for you on the website, it's called a Dig a Little Deeper diagnostic. It's under a Reveal the Root Causes page, and it will help you identify the reasons why your body is hospitable to cancer. It's not just cancer, it's all chronic disease, but there are things you can be doing that are positive, like sleeping or eating supplements or walking in the forest. And there are things you can be doing that are negative, like um, sleeping with your cell phone next to your bed, or it could be having stressful work or things like that. So the idea is nobody's perfect, but we've developed all of these resources so the average person can truly not have to spend their dollar and all of their money and everything they have doing this, but it's served on a silver platter so that it's all here right for you.
Amazing. And I just want to also, again, like celebrate and honor you for that, because, a lot of people listening are coaches and healers, and it's all about getting enough resources to get people to sign something to spend a lot of money. And you're one of the very few people that like you literally like your whole life mission is just giving people free resources to change and save their life. So thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
When I was diagnosed, the thing I prayed for, which I don't think is the most things people prayed for, but I prayed to have a story that was so awesome people would want to repeat it. And without a doubt, I accomplished that.
I tell your story probably more than anybody else. And that's saying a lot because I have a lot of really cool stories in my sphere.
Oh, I'm so glad to hear that. Oh, thank
Yeah.
you for sharing it. Yeah.
Yeah. So I didn't say this at the beginning, but this has been a long time coming, guys. Like I've wanted Julie on the podcast and I was just kind of waiting for like divine timing. And here we are. So I'm just so grateful.
I'm so grateful for you helping me to share Mojo with the world. This is a patient-led evolution to healthcare. And so I hope for all of your listeners, you'll go on, you'll take a peek at our website. It's mojohealth.org and look at this with the formula, the toolboxes, the doctors you can use. It's all here for you. We even have an interview guide for how to interview your oncologist or what your role is as a patient. Like I have tried to go through and build this like this is a client deliverable so that you can have every resource really just at your fingertips.
100%. And that link is below, of course, you guys. And I will be sharing this on the socials. So make sure you click on the link, mojohealth.org, share it with a friend, because there's not one person here who has a friend that either, has fear of the C word or has recently received the C word. So this is pivotal, life-changing information. I know this is the conversation that people are going to come back to time and time again. And I'm just so grateful.
Well, thank you so much for having me on and thanks for sharing Mojo with the world.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Julie.
All right, take care.
Bye.
Bye.